Well, good morning. What a very polite crowd. Boy, the speaker comes up here and you get quiet. You're so polite this morning. Welcome to Concordia University. It is so nice to have you here on our campus this morning. What a gorgeous day, beautiful setting here in Irvine. Today is truly a great day to be alive. It's truly the day the Lord has made. Let us all rejoice and be glad in today. Bring a lot of enthusiasm and joy to our day as we go through our learning this morning and this afternoon and this weekend. And it's just great to have you here at Concordia University. My name is Kent Schlichtenmeyer, and I am privileged to serve as the Dean of the School of Education here at Concordia. Today marks the beginning of my 42nd year in education. And it's unbelievable. Well, It's unbelievable to stand in front of people after that many years of teaching and tell you, looking you into the eyes, that I absolutely love to teach. I think this is the greatest profession on earth, and I want to applaud you for entering the profession of teaching. I love hanging around teachers because you're special people. You really are. You've committed a lot of time and energy to shaping the lives of young people, and so you're very gifted, very talented, and very special people. So I applaud you for entering this arena where you have the opportunity to change the lives of kids on a daily basis. I also want to applaud you for starting your master's degree or continuing your master's degree. I'm a firm believer that there is power in education. Education is going to open up doors for you. The more education you receive in life, the more opportunities you will achieve and be accessible to as you live your lives. So it's a great thing to be about education. I also believe that education is a great equalizer. It cuts across all races, socioeconomic status. It cuts across backgrounds. It's a great equalizer in life. So the amount of work that you're about to begin as master's students is going to be well worth your efforts, your time, and your dollars. As you pursue your master's degree here at Concordia and advance yourself, obviously you're going to get a bump in salary in your school, so that's a very good pragmatic reason as to why it's great to be a student, right? Some of you are shaking your head enthusiastically, yes. Coming back and being a graduate student is a great opportunity to network with other professionals. And that's one of the purposes of this event today, is so that you can begin to network and get to know each other face to face. Because as you meet other talented people, it's going to, again, open up doors for you and allow you to answer questions. And then most importantly, education is of such great value because you're going to become a much stronger, much more talented professional for the sake of those students that you face on a daily basis. So everything you're doing right now, my friends, is well worth your time. I also believe one of my favorite slogans or one of my favorite statements is that to be more, you must become more. You want to be somebody in life, you have to become more. And you become more through the books you read, the people you meet, and the places you travel. The most talented, the most intelligent people I know are prolific readers. Okay, and you're going to get a chance to do that, right? As a graduate student, you're going to read some books, you're going to read a lot of articles. Okay, so that's a good thing. You're going to become more because of the reading you're doing. You're going to meet people. And my encouragement to you is, as you meet people, don't just meet them, ask them questions. Ask people questions. Ask your colleagues in class as many questions as possible. Because everybody has a story. Everybody has information to learn from. You want to be almost selfish when you meet somebody and learn something. Take every meeting as an opportunity to advance yourself in some way, okay? To learn something more about your profession. And I want to tell you, the professors that you're going to interact with in this program are unbelievable. They are unbelievably talented practitioners, and they have a wealth of information to share with you, so ask them questions. Pepper them with emails on the side. Give them phone calls, okay? They are there to share some of the wisdom that they've acquired over their X number of years in the classroom and in schools, okay? And then hopefully you're going to get an opportunity to travel someday. May not for the next 12 or 24 months while you're a graduate student, but take advantage of opportunities to travel because you're going to become more. So to be more, we want to become more. And at Concordia University, we want you to become the very best and the most talented educators you can possibly become. As I look out here today, I'd love to know who I'm speaking to a little bit, okay? So I'm going to ask you to do a little exercise, just a little aerobic exercise, and ask you to stand up for these questions, okay? Just so we can get a sense of who's in the CU Center today. First off, how many of you, would you please stand if this is the first time ever to our campus? Please stand. Okay, well, we welcome you. Thank you very much. Okay, so you're first timers here. How many of you are, if you are teachers in the classroom, please stand. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. If you are an administrator at this point in time, serving in administration, please stand. Okay, so we have a few administrators. Great, great, thank you. If you are a school counselor, please stand. Okay, a few school counselors. Excellent, excellent. Please stand if you are in our administration program. Okay, right here in the center. Very good, thank you very much. If you're in the curriculum and instruction program, please stand and look around, see who else is in the same program as you. Very good, thank you. And how many are in the Ed Tech program? There they are, Ed Tech, thank you very much. And finally, the school counseling program. How many of you are in our school counseling masters? All right, very good in the back there. Excellent. Do we have any undergraduates, teacher credential students in the crowd? Any undergraduates, please stand. Okay, they're sleeping in. That's kind of the norm. All right, the undergrads, this is kind of early, so they're not here. How many guests, not in any of our programs right now, how many guests do we have here with us this morning? We have a few guests. Okay, good, thank you. And then may I ask, how many of you are alumni? Any alums, please stand. Alums. We have some as instructors. We have some as students. Great. All right. Thank you for coming back. Great. And then, would you please stand if you are interested someday, if you think that you are going to go past the master's degree and pursue a doctoral degree in education? Please stand. How many of you are going to go the next step? That's great. That's exciting. Okay, good. And we're real excited to have you meet our executive director in just a minute of the EDD program. I'll call him up on stage and introduce him to you. And you will have the opportunity to learn more about our executive EDD program in educational administration that we offer here at Concordia. So fantastic. Well, thank you very much for introducing yourselves. And I hope that you will, again, today have the opportunity to introduce yourself to other members in your program, so that as you're doing a lot of online work, you can put a face and a name together, and certainly have an opportunity to meet your professors today. This morning, I'd like to take just a minute to talk about our leadership plan in the School of Education, just so you know where we're coming from here at Concordia University in the School of Education. Every great organization, and really every great leader, knows their purpose, they know where they want to go, and they know how they're going to get there. That's called mission, vision, and core values. We in the School of Education have been very careful to identify what our mission is, vision, and core values. And I'd just like to read these to you this morning. If you see the mission statement there, our mission statement is to prepare servant leaders who transform lives through innovative and exceptional educational practices to positively impact local and global communities. That's why our School of Education is in existence. That's why we were founded. Everything we do centers on our purpose. But where we want to go, what makes us distinctive, is reflected in our vision statement and in our core values. Our vision statement is we'd like to be a distinguished, you can put whatever adjective you want to in that blank, to be an exemplary, to be a noteworthy, to be an excellent, an outstanding, but we'd like to be a distinguished school of education that attracts, equips, and supports servant leaders for today's public and private schools. Okay, so we are all about attracting as many students as possible to our program. And then once you're here, we want to equip you with the skills necessary to be excellent. And then once you leave our school, we want to support you and encourage you and be of help to you in the trenches. Okay, so that's our vision for why we're here and what we do on a regular basis. And you'll notice our core values, we have 4 core values. And really, the first one is what makes us most distinctive. From UCLA, Cal State, Claremont, USC, our first core value is really why we're fired up to be here as educators at Concordia University, is we want to spend time and energy offering students like you Christ-like service. This is a Christian university. Every professor you interact with, every staff person you interact with, they understand and believe the 2 most important sentences in the history of the world. The first most important sentence in the history of the world is this one. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's Genesis 1:1, the first sentence of the Bible. If you can believe that sentence, you can believe every sentence that comes after it in the Bible. If you can believe that God created the heavens and the earth, you can believe that Daniel survived in the lion's den, you can believe that Moses parted the Red Sea, you can believe that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego survived the fiery furnace, you can believe that Jesus Christ walked on water, Jesus healed the sick, and you can walk yourself to the second most important sentence in the history of the world, which is John 3:16, which says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son to die for us, that whoever believes in him will never die, but live with him in eternity." Those 2 sentences, Genesis 1:1, John 3:16, we believe are the 2 most important sentences in the world's history. And we don't know how familiar you are with those sentences, but we encourage you and hope that you are going to become more excited about those sentences as you go through our programs here. But I want you to know that's what differentiates Concordia University from the university down the road, okay, or up the road. And we're real excited to be here. The other things that we try to take a lot of pride in is that we have professors who are scholars and practitioners. That we can promise you. Every professor you have in our programs, they have been in the trenches or are currently in the trenches. They are not theorists, okay? They are not going to be educational theorists. They know what reality looks like in the trenches, okay? So we promise you that. The third thing we try to do is offer great, relevant, practical curriculum, not a lot of theory. We want it to be practical, relevant to you, to enhance your practice on Monday mornings. And then the fourth thing we try to do here is we try to expend time in developing partnerships with public school districts and school principals, because we want to create avenues, pipelines for our teacher credential students to get jobs someday. We want to create pipelines to help you get promoted, advanced in your careers as desired. So we spend a lot of time in those 4 areas. Guys, I'm telling you, the servant leaders, as you come to our program, we pray, we hope that you will become more servant-like with your students. More servant-like. A good synonym for servant is humble. We hope you become more humble and reach out and serve your students as opposed to many teachers or executives who carry themselves like big shots, okay? I have believed with all my heart that humility is charismatic. Arrogance is repulsive. your kids, your parents, are going to naturally attract to you when they see humility, when they see a servant in action, when they see somebody reaching out and wiping the runny noses and tending for those sick kids and helping the kids that are struggling with empathy. You're going to be much more loved, much more admired as you continue your career. I'm telling you, the only time people follow an arrogant leader is when they have to, right? None of us like to be around arrogance. You come around arrogance and bing, you want to repel from arrogance. And so that's our vision and our mission, to create servant leaders. I'm telling you, my friends, your students will be impressed with your intelligence. They'll be impressed with your degrees, but they will cherish and remember your legacy for the person you are. Who you are will be longer remembered than what you do. Okay, who you are as a person, and that begins with service. So that's kind of where we're at Concordia University. That's where we hang our hat. I know I became a teacher years ago, a few decades ago, because of the humble service of my high school baseball coach and geography teacher, Mr. Kettner. Made a huge impact in my life as a 17-year-old, shaky, insecure adolescent. And I owe him everything in my life. So we're real glad you're here, and thankful that we have a faculty and staff that came today. And I want to ask all of our faculty and staff up here. I want you to just see them and meet them. So all faculty and staff, please come on up here on stage with me. Heather. Tanya, come on up here. And who else am I missing? Laura, Sandy Mercier, come on up here. And who else am I missing? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, these people all wearing these nice green shirts are your faculty and staff who came out this morning. And they're not getting extra bump in their salary for being here. They came out here to meet you. They wanted to meet you, and they're here to serve you and connect with you. And that's what, again, makes our program, I think, very, very distinctive. The faculty and staff, they absolutely care about you and are eager to help you be successful. I'd like to introduce here first, just personally, and I'll have everybody else introduce themselves. Well, maybe I won't. I'll have you raise your hands in just a minute. But this right here is Heather Vesner. Professor Vesner is our assistant dean in the School of Education. Long-time expert in early childhood. Dr. Doring is our executive director in the EDD program, and he has started our EDD program 4 or 5 years ago, and today oversees an excellent EDD program. He's going to have a table set up for you in the services part at the end of our presentation, so you can ask him questions and hear more about the EDD program. Dr. Kelly Albrecht right here is the executive director of our master's programs. She oversees all 4 programs. Dr. Sandra Charlemagne is at home virtually. She's a senior director of the school counseling program. She's meeting with us virtually. Dr. Tanya Tarbutton, who again I'll introduce in just a minute, is the director, co-director of the admin program. And then Sandy Mercier is the director of the Ed Tech program. And then Lori Doyle is virtually with us in Arizona. She serves as the director of the curriculum instruction program, okay? But here is the rest of the gang, and it is so nice. I did want to have the advisors step up. Mariah, step on up here. Mariah is the advisor for curriculum instruction and Ed Tech. She's going to have a table out there. If you're having any advising issues, she is eager to help you. Debbie Verdesia is right over here. She's the advisor for the school counseling and admin program. Jill Swisher technically is the director of the advisors. She's remote in Texas, but Debbie can answer any questions you have about school counseling or admin program, and she will also be at a table for you in a little bit. And then the rest of the gang here, if you are an administrative assistant, Kathy Mueller right here, this is the dean's office assistant, who's very responsible for putting this together. Debbie Fergine, is she here? Debbie Fergine is outside, another great integral part of today's activities. And then just professors, if you are in the C&I program, could you please step forward and raise your hands? C&I. Okay, so C&I people, those are the people you want to connect with today. Okay, C&I. All right, Ed Tech, right here. Ed Tech, very good. Thank you for being here. School counseling, all the school counseling professors and staff right here. Fantastic. That's a bunch of them. And then the administration program, all the admin people step forward. Great. Thank you. Will you join me in thanking these guys? Thank you so much. Thanks. You guys can go back. Oh, and before we go back, our professors, some of these professors are eager to test out their ball throwing arms. Step on up there. They got a little gift for some of you. See how far you can throw those things. Hey. All right. There you go, man. We got to get one of those guns to shoot them in the back. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, as they're returning to their seats, I want to just cover just a couple miscellaneous notes here for you before I introduce Dr. Tarbutton to introduce our guest speaker this morning. At 11:30 today, we're going to go from 9 to about 10:15 this morning with our guest speaker, take a break, and then go till 11:30, from 10:30 to 11:30. And then at 11:30, we're going to have tables set up in the back for services fair. People here to serve you. We're going to have our advisors here, members from the writing studio, people who are eager to help you with your writing. We're going to have representatives from AXA, the Association of California School Administrators Association. I believe the credit union is coming, the Teachers Credit Union. We're going to have members from the IT services. If you're having any trouble with IT is going to be here. We're going to have the bookstore here. The EDD executive director is going to be here, and I believe members from the Wellness Center are going to be here. So we have a variety of tables set up for you at 11:30. Please take advantage of that opportunity to network and get your questions answered. And then also, if you are interested, we're going to have 3 sessions, 3 groups for campus tours. If you've never been to our campus and like to see the cafeteria, we just renovated the cafeteria this summer. It's beautiful. Show you the gym. The bookstore, and then walk you over to this new $35 million building that's going to be dedicated in October. We have a brand new building. It's the Music Worship Theology building, and very, very spectacular. It's really nice. So we'd be happy to give you a campus tour at that time. My last note, the bathrooms. If you're interested, you can go through these doors or outside. There are bathrooms on the side over here, and then there are bathrooms over here in the theater. So in 2 different places during the breaks. So we're thrilled to have you here, to have you on campus, and just to bring you together on this glorious day. And we hope that you have a great time. And we're sure looking forward to our guest speaker. I've heard such great things about our speaker, and I'm eager to take some notes. So this morning, before I introduce Dr. Tarbutton, would you join me in a word of prayer? Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning and just want to thank you for this beautiful day. It truly is a great day to be alive. You've given us all such impressive gifts and blessings, and we just want to thank you. We thank you for the opportunity to pursue a graduate degree. We ask that you go with each of these students and these professors as we begin another year. guide them, inspire them, give them great joy in their studies, and great clarity in the purpose of their lives in the future. And Lord, we just ask you to help each one of us as we're committed to helping those young kids in schools today get better, enjoy life in a more fruitful, happy way. Life is tough, and you call us to be the light in the darkness and beacons of hope. And just give us great joy in our work as teachers and administrators and counselors. We just thank you and ask you to bless our speaker and our time together this morning. It's in your name we pray. Amen. So this morning, let me introduce Dr. Tarbutton one more time, who's going to introduce our speaker, and tell you that Dr. Tarbutton is a good friend of mine, a good friend of our university, and absolutely expert in leadership, and has designed our admin program to be one of the most exemplary ones it can possibly be. So thank you for being here. It's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I brought some cheat sheets here because I don't want to forget anything. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest. In organizational leadership, and she also recently designed a new master's program in educational leadership. Dr. Capolino serves in several key leadership roles over at Brandman, including the chair of the Educational Administration Program, chair of the doctoral program, chair of the Faculty Personnel Committee, as well as being an instructional designer and program developer. Her accomplishments go on and on. Now you know why I needed the cheat sheet. Because of her outstanding work over at Brandman, she was recognized as Faculty Member of the Year in the School of Education in both 2013 and 2016. The microphone sounds like it just got louder. She was also given the California Educational Researchers Association's Institutions of Higher Education Leadership Award in 2014. And prior to becoming a higher educational instructor, Dr. Capolino worked in the K-12 education system, where she served as both an elementary and middle school teacher. Later, she went on to become both a middle school and high school administrator. Dr. Capolino was given the Model of Excellence Award as she conducted her work as an administrator, leading her school with a 56-point API gain, which was the largest in her school district in 1 year. And additionally, Dr. Capolino serves as the AXA Region 19's first mentor. She was one of the first mentors, and later she was trained as a master mentor trainer. She has also written many publications, including a book called 92 Tips from the Trenches, How to Stay in the Game as an Educational Leader. Dr. Capolino currently serves as a leadership coach, community advocate, consultant, and a speaker. Dr. Capolino is a friend of mine. I've had the pleasure of knowing her now for nearly a decade. She has been a mentor in my life. She is dynamic and passionate about education, and I think that she actually walks through life that way all the time. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Capolino.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing? So really hard to hear about all those accomplishments, and I'll talk a little bit about that because ironically I'm here to talk about the imposter syndrome, and I'm probably the person who feels most like an imposter this morning, to be honest with you. So we're going to be talking about finding the superhero from within, overcoming the imposter syndrome. How many of you have heard of the imposter syndrome? Okay, a few of you. So this is just a little bit of what we're going to go over, but speaking to my ed admin folks, just to get us started, is there anyone that when you were in kindergarten they asked you, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Did anyone say, I want to be a principal? Hey, look, only one person dreamed of being an administrator, right? So I think that proves my first point, which is that admin is often the accidental profession, right? You never planned on going into it. How many of you got tapped on the shoulder for leadership and were told, you know, you'd be a really good administrator. I think you should get into a program. Raise your hand. No, you can't be shy. Okay. So most of you got tapped on the shoulder. I won't make you guys raise your hand, but I'm assuming there's a few of you that would like the pay bump, which was mentioned earlier. That used to be why we had a lot of ed admin candidates actually go through. They figured, hey, if I got to get a master's degree, I might as well, get it in ed admin in case I want to be an administrator, right? So it's one of those professions that most people don't ever intend to go into, which I think plays heavily into even imposter syndrome being more present, right? Because how many of you, when someone tapped you on the shoulder, were you like, oh yeah, I totally get why I should be in administration. I'm totally a leader. Were you feeling totally confident? Yeah, I hear some laughs. You're like, no. Did you see those qualities in yourself? Probably not. So luckily you took the leap to decide to get in the profession anyway. And again, for our other folks that are in technology, in curriculum instruction, our counseling folks, you probably had some of those same experiences. I don't know if you ever planned on getting, your master's in ed tech. I'm sure that probably wasn't what you wrote on your, first grade All About Me poster, right? So we all kind of come to our careers, through a variety of different venues and, people encouraging and believing us. So because other people tend to believe in us more, we tend to doubt our own abilities, right? How many of you have ever experienced some sort of doubt in your abilities? Okay, it better be the whole room, or you guys are just not being truthful today. You can't do that. We're in a chapel, right? So complete honesty is necessary. So, right, so we often doubt our own capabilities, and that's fine, and it's normal, but it can really get in the way of our success and in building relationships with others, and along with a host of other things. So that's what I really want to talk about today, is kind of making you a little bit more aware of imposter syndrome, being a little more self-reflective on how you might be experiencing that, and kind of share with you some of my struggles with it as well. So this is my welcome, and as you can see, I readily admit I am not only an imposter, but I am an authentic leader, okay? Even to this day, I feel like an imposter. And so despite all the, So for the goals for today is I am going to share my story. So like your dean was saying, people aren't going to always remember what you teach them, but they'll remember who you are. You're going to know more about me by the end of this presentation than you probably had ever hoped to know, okay? But I'm hoping that as I'm sharing my story, I'm going to make connections with each of you. You're going to be able to relate to something that I'm also sharing, okay? So we're going to take a look at that. I'm going to be really vulnerable. I'm going to tell you things that I've never told publicly in a room full of, 150 people, and all of our folks online. Good morning as well. So I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to share things. And again, I hope to inspire you to share your story. That's really kind of my underlying message in this as well. So hopefully we're going to make some connections with each other. As we go through this, I will ask for you to participate on occasion, but also I'm hoping to make connections with each of you throughout our talk today. So we will be talking about the imposter syndrome, and hopefully we'll have some of you share your stories as well. So that's kind of our game plan. So, oops, sorry, clicked too fast. So as Tanya mentioned, I've had a lot of accomplishments, and as she's sitting there reading them, I'm literally squirming in my seat, okay? Isn't it hard to hear nice things about yourself, right? And as she's reading, I'm thinking, that wasn't such a big deal, like that's not a big deal, or, oh, okay, yeah, so what, I presented a few places, not a big deal. So what's interesting, and I brought this because this is really how I feel, okay? So I brought this to just wear for a minute. They asked me to be a keynote presenter, right? So originally, yes, I know, I'm being a little obnoxious, but just bear with me. These are some of my conference badges. We all have these, right? Don't educators, we collect them. We collect everything because we might need them again, right? No? Of course we might need these again, right? It's very important. And then, and then if you got a presenter badge, that makes you extra special and you're a VIP, right? So originally they asked me to conduct a workshop on one of the Cal APA cycles. And for those of you that are not in ed admin, Cal APA is the new assessment test because the state likes to keep testing us, right? So it's one of the assessment tests. And I was going to speak on data. And I'm like, oh, no problem. Data analysis, no problem. Workshop style, got it, right? And then Concordia's program evolved just like the one that I run, evolved and changed. And before I know it, it's, Tammy, would you mind being our keynote? I'm like, keynote? Just the difference between keynote and workshop presenter threw me into a complete panic, right? Because in reality, I feel like a workshop presenter, right? I can do a little conference at California League of Schools. Has anyone been to their conference, right? No? Has anyone presented at a conference? Okay, a few of you, okay? But to be a keynote was almost like overwhelming to me, and I immediately felt like an imposter. Absolutely, I'm not a keynote. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this. I can't speak like this, you know. So even as I stand before you today, I am suffering from the very thing that I'm here to speak to you about, okay? So I just want you to know that, you know, we all go through that, and that's why really, when it boils down to it, I do feel like I am the imposter. And yes, that is a Dr. Capolino bobblehead that one of my students purchased for me. So I can live on forever, and you can too. So yeah, that's my little funny imposter caricature there. So you know, adding to my nervousness, and I'm just being real with you, right? I'll just, like I said, I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be vulnerable. I came a couple months back to one of the other symposiums, and Jeff Eben was here. How many of you were here when he was here? Okay. He's awesome, right? So they're like, oh, come and see what they do at Symposium. Okay, no problem. So I come and I get in there and I see Jeff even at the front of the room. I was like, you got to be kidding me. You know, I said, I've hired him twice in my own position to hire him as a keynote. Now you want me to do what he does? Whoa. So again, the imposter syndrome just kept building and building. And then I know you have coming up, you have Julie Adams as a symposium speaker. And you know what? That woman is everywhere I go, every conference, you know, I hear her name constantly. So again, I feel like there's very big shoes to fill, but I just want to be transparent with you that even at this stage in the game in my career, being an imposter is totally something normal that I experience. How many of you feel like you felt like you're an imposter sometimes? Okay, good, everybody, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So one of the things to overcome being an imposter syndrome, and we're going to go more into the technicalities of what it is in just a bit, is to really be self-reflective about when do you feel like an imposter? When do you feel like a fraud, right? When you're faking it, right? And so I kind of went deep back into my early childhood, and this is meant to be a little funny, okay? And there I am. I'm very early on and am an imposter. So I don't know, that's either a mix between I'm trying to pretend I'm my grandma or a clown. I'm not really sure which one, okay? So then I moved on and I thought, oh, well, might as well be an animal, right? Or an insect. So now I'm a bee. I guess apparently as a child, I spent a lot of time trying to pretend I was somebody other than myself. And I think that will be clear as we move on. I was also an only child, and you know, we have to entertain ourselves a lot too. How many of you were only children? So you can probably relate to that, right? You have to keep yourself entertained quite a bit. And this is one of my favorites. I'm in the back row at my 5th grade violin concert. Anyone play music in elementary school? Okay. It looks lovely, but I'm absolutely faking the whole darn thing. I had no idea how to play, okay? I admit it. And then the next year when I did clarinet, I also didn't know how to play that either. So, you know, so apparently this imposter syndrome has been residing in me for a very, very, very long time. And then even as an adult, I guess I really couldn't get away from it either, because there I am as Spider-Man. Yes, with my lovely daughter. So isn't it fun to be someone that you're not? It's always so much fun. But eventually, one day, being comfortable in your own skin is important. And then lastly, and more recently, I am the President of the United States. I guess they didn't tell you that, but yes, I am the president. So if you take a look back at your life, I'm sure you can pinpoint some times where you've been an imposter. And those first few pictures are meant just to be funny. But I'm going to talk more seriously about my journey of leadership, being an imposter and really trying to finding my true self. And then I'm hoping that you're going to find the same thing through by reflecting upon your story. So this next picture, again, never publicly seen, is such a beauty. This is my early years. Oh, yes. That's me, not my brother, just if anyone's wondering, because I get that a lot. So I was severely, severely bullied as a child. Anyone else bullied and harassed? Right? I know not probably everyone wants to admit it. But yes, I actually thought I looked quite lovely this day. This was on St. Patrick's Day, hence the green. It was my 6th grade year, and I was actually home with the chicken pox. That's a little behind the scenes story. But as a kid in elementary school, I was picked on, ridiculed, even like physically assaulted in 5th grade. And so my parents pulled me out into a private school my 6th grade year, where I finally felt like I could be me. Very small private school, and so that was like the first time where I didn't feel like I had to try to fit in, right? And so I didn't have to be that imposter so much. But it was still pretty devastating. And, you know, most people call me Tammy, when I was in school, Tammy. And you know what? The nickname they gave me was actually quite clever. They get an A for clever, but contaminated is how they used to ridicule me, right? So if you've been bullied, you know that really does change you at your core, okay? And as teachers and as leaders, I know we see students bullied on our campus all the time. And for someone who has been bullied, it's heartbreaking because you know it really, truly is changing them as a human being. Then a little bit later on, still was trying to get through school, didn't fit in, right? So freshman year, had a devastating knee injury, could no longer run track. So where was I going to fit in? I was the goofy kid that, you know, in high school, didn't drink, didn't party, you know, had a long-term boyfriend, didn't try to be one of the cool kids, wasn't in drama, I was completely disconnected, really, from school. But I performed very well, and I could miss a lot of days of school and still perform very well. My saving grace at that point was that my mom worked for a doctor, so she could write endless doctor's notes, right? I didn't even have to forge mine or anything like that. Mine were all legit, signed by a physician, because I remember one year they were literally going to kick me out of my Spanish class first period because I missed it so much, and I had an A in the class, right? So again, it had nothing to do with academic ability, but that feeling like I didn't fit in, that whole imposter was still existing even while I was in high school. And again, our students out in our schools, they feel this way too. There's tremendous pressure to fit and conform, and it's very difficult for a lot of our students. So that definitely has always played into my perspective as a teacher and a leader, is keeping in mind those kids. And then so I kind of took an alternative route. So the high school thing was just kind of painful for me. I just really couldn't do it. And my mom found a loophole for me to go straight into community college. So I actually started community college when I was 16. Did anyone take an alternative route in high school at all in here? Yeah, all traditional? Okay, a couple. Great. And so that was really just a fantastic thing for me, because now that social aspect was gone. But as soon as I walked onto the college campus at 16 years old, what was I feeling again? Like a complete imposter, right? Because who at 16 is on a college campus? So it was kind of interesting how, once again, this imposter syndrome just kept following me wherever I went. Okay? And then my first semester in college, I actually became pregnant with my son. Right? So I guess, you know, a lot of this I did to myself, granted. So not the wisest decision, but I did have my beautiful son, Kyle, when I was 17 years old. And so that automatically threw me into the parenting realm, where once again I felt like an imposter, because who's 17 and who's a mom, right? So I even felt like a fake as a parent. So, you know, this imposter theory can rear its ugly head literally from day one. And hopefully as I'm telling this story, you're kind of thinking about your own life and some of the instances where that may have happened with you. And then my last early years photo, which this one cracks me up, ended up having 4 children. So that's my beautiful family. The oldest up there is Kyle, Cody, Taylor, and Troy. But even in this photo, I felt like a complete fraud and a complete fake. Okay? I drove a minivan because that's what you do, right? Gosh, that just killed me driving a minivan. I don't know. I'm a car snob, I guess. Anyone relate to that? Then I had to upgrade to a Suburban because it's a little cooler, right? Look at, out of all the things I said, the moms relate to the minivan thing the most. Isn't that's awesome. Great. I just connected with all the moms. But it's true that when you have to finally switch cars when you have so many kids and you're driving around with a minivan, I felt like I was a fake mom driving around in a minivan. 4 kids, I didn't feel like I really had any business having 4 kids. I really wasn't even planning on having any kids. Every time I had one, I gave away all the baby stuff, said it's never going to happen again, and there you go, right? So, but again, completely just did not feel like, that I was really there. I just felt like most of my life I've been walking through like I'm faking it. I'm an imposter, And so I want you to take just, well, actually, I'm going to go right here. I want you to take just a moment, and this is personal reflection right now because it's going to tie to the end. Think about your early days real quick, and what elements of your life did you maybe feel like you were faking it in the early days? And what events in your life taught you valuable lessons? So my valuable lessons during that point in time were really resilience and compassion, okay? Because I had a lot of obstacles against me, right? Statistically speaking, I should not have a doctorate degree or have ever graduated college of any sort, right? And I'm sure many of you fall into some category of statistics where you beat the odds, right? So think about what different types of lessons you learned during your early years and try to boil it down to 1 or 2 words. And then compassion, okay? Compassion came from really just understanding that not everyone takes the same path, right? When I was young, I was really judgmental, super judgy. Anyone judgy when you were younger? You guys are like, no. We were perfect. Okay. See, I'm fine, I'll be honest. And vulnerable and authentic, it's fine, that's why I'm here. But I was really judgy. I mean, if you would have talked to me like junior high and you talked to me about someone being a teen mom, I would have been like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. That person is just horrible, right? Or not going the traditional route into college, that's horrible. I would have been completely judgy. So my life experience really did teach me to be more compassionate towards others at this point in time and really how to be resilient and keep pushing through those difficulties. So I'm going to give you just a minute. I want you to ponder maybe what are the key lessons you learned in your early days and pinpoint any of the times where you felt like maybe you were an imposter, okay? So I'll just give you a quiet minute or so. Okay. Do we have our mic people queued up? Okay, good, thanks. Is there anyone authentic and daring enough to share some of what you came up with? And of course, we expect the leaders to lead by a few of you participating. No pressure. Great. Are you in counseling? No. Admin too? Okay.
Okay, so I felt like an imposter when I was teaching at a school where I didn't. I felt like an imposter when I was teaching at a school where I didn't look like everyone, and when I didn't share similar beliefs to the teaching styles.
Excellent. Thank you. Who else? For a room of everyone that said they raised their hand and felt like an imposter, you're sure being shy. Great. We've got a couple. And then we'll come to you in the second row.
Hi, my name is Julie, and thank you for being here. This is good information. I love it. I most felt like I was an imposter when I was 25 years old with a bachelor's degree. I, too, had just had my son and found myself tapped on the shoulder and asked to teach adults when I wasn't quite an adult myself, so I felt like a big imposter. So.
All right. Excellent. Yeah. And I'm not sure if she still wanted to share, but.
I was only going to share because no one else was raising their hand.
Well, that's always a great reason.
Okay, so my name is Beverly. I realized as you were speaking that I felt like an imposter in the majority of my personal relationships because I felt like I was always, or am always, but tomorrow I will not, trying to be what people wanted me to be so that they would love me.
Yeah, no, that's deeply insightful. Thank you for sharing. I think we have a hand over here too. And then is there another one over there too? Okay. We'll just take a few more.
Hi, I'm Rob. I learned about the imposter syndrome just under a year ago. I remember reading or watching it on TV or something, and it's kind of an epiphany. It was one of those, I thought I was the only one. I really honestly thought that I was the only one that went through life with pretty good success that really didn't believe that I deserved it or earned it. And as I'm listening to you, I was just kind of writing some notes down about my own personal life, and I remember that back in junior high school and high school, I just didn't like who I was. I didn't like myself at all. I was just, see all these other people that you want to be aspiring to, and I just wasn't that person. And I remember I had this fantasy that someday I just wanted to go somewhere and pretend I had amnesia and just start over. And it was just one of those things I just wanted to do for a long time. When I got to high school, I had a little bit different experience. I had a really good best friend who was very gregarious and outgoing and taught me to kind of get out there and just, who cares what other people think, just kind of go out and have fun. I did. So throughout high school, I didn't really suffer through that syndrome whatsoever. But then I became a Spanish teacher, and for a gringo to try and speak Spanish to a bunch of kids and some of those kids grew up speaking Spanish, I felt like an imposter because I was terrified that they're going to ask me, hey, how do you say this? And it's like, I don't know. I've never learned that word. I've never been around that. I don't know. And then I realized that, it's like, here, look at this dictionary. How many of these words have you never seen in your own language? I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I learned throughout all that I can kind of survive that, but I still felt that way. As a coach, I coached volleyball for 21 years. We had a CIF championship. We had 11 league championships. We had all these different things. But I was afraid that somebody's going to point out that, wait a minute, where did you play in college? Well, I didn't play in college. I played in high school. But I loved the game, and I just learned, and I learned, and I learned. So even throughout most of my college or my high school coaching career, I still felt that. You as a parent. My wife and I, when we were in the car with our first kid going home, they let us take him home.
Yes, exactly.
What's wrong with them? We don't know what we're doing. We have no clue what we're doing. And so that was one of those weird things. And even as a teacher, years and years of teaching and coaching and being athletic director and all sorts of different things, it was really bizarre, but when I took curriculum instruction, master's degree program, and I'm on the discussion boards answering all these questions from all these other teachers, I realized these 25 plus years of teaching, I learned something along the way and I can share that. So that's one of the impetus for me becoming a Concordia professor, to kind of overcome that imposter syndrome. But it's real. It's definitely real.
Right. Yeah, no, great. Glad you connected on so many levels. And I think interestingly, just like you said you just recently heard about imposter syndrome. I heard about it in my own doctoral program, so for about 10 years ago. But you can see just through the stories that we shared, look at how many times people felt that way, either at a very young age or, you know, along the way, and we never discuss it, right? I mean, it's a lonely feeling to feel like you're totally a fake and a fraud, right? It's a horrible feeling. So, you know, maybe that's something as teachers and as leaders we can start to impart and share with other people. Okay. Was there anyone else? I didn't want to cut anyone off, but we will be sharing more too, but we've got one more in the back we'll take.
I'm not standing because I'm afraid my back is really killing me. Please
It's okay.
forgive me. Empathetic and persistent. I also was a 17-year-old pregnant, and 18, I had my son. And I would feel like an imposter mom, like, is he gonna know to call me mom? Or is he gonna call my mom? You know what I mean? Because I call her mom. I'm like, oh my God, you know. How am I gonna work this out? And of course, we're best friends. He's 21. He's great. The best thing that ever happened to me. And the other one was being an athletic trainer. I've been an athletic trainer for 20 years now. And I'm not a certified athletic trainer. I don't know if anybody knows about the different laws that are changing in California. But I've served under 4 like awesome athletic trainers that are certified, that have trained me. And I've been like innovative in what I've done. I have like 6 doctors that roll with me. You know, it's awesome. But I'm like, I find myself meeting an athletic trainer, they're like, I'm certified. I'm like, I'm not certified. I'm sorry, you know, but I know so much, the experience. Sometimes a master's degree athletic trainer can't answer the question that I can answer. And I'm just like, Lord, could you continue to go before me and not let me mess up? Because I love these kids and, you know, do I belong here? It's just a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for sharing. And again, we'll have more chance to share too. And you guys already started touching upon about my next thing. I was going to talk next just a little bit about career and education in my experience with the imposter syndrome. And a lot of you touched upon that. So I think you'll relate. So isn't this this is another just wonderful picture, right? It's just beautiful. It's marvelous. So what I'll talk about is when I was going through my teaching credentialing program, I started to substitute teach. How many of you were substitute teachers? Okay. Do you remember the first day you ever subbed? Okay. So back, and I think they kind of do it the similar way, but back when I was substitute teaching, which would have been in the late 90s, it was the automated phone dialer system would call and offer you the job. At least, you know, it was some districts did it that way, some still had someone call you. What do they do now? Do they just email you, text you? The what? I'm sorry? Okay. So it was back in the day when it was an automated phone system. They'd call you and say, hello, would you like to, you know, substitute teach at Santa Ana Elementary School tomorrow? You know, the whole deal. And I'm like, yes, press 1. Woo! Press 1, and then I press 1, and then I absolutely panicked. Right? I mean, this is like a first grade class, big deal, right? I've got 4 kids at home, it's a first grade class, and I am completely panic stricken, like, I'm not a teacher, I'm not even a substitute teacher, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I got myself so worked up that by that evening, I literally was in tears, called back the system and declined the job. Anyone decline your first job? Anyone panic and chicken out like me? No? Okay, oh, say, yay, one person in the back's with me. Great. And so I didn't even think I could fake being a substitute teacher for first grade for one day, right? And so that was a little scary because if I couldn't do that, how in the heck was I going to teach, right? Teach all day and teach, you know, day after day. So I was still even feeling it then. And then when I got my credential, became an intern. Anyone get their credential through intern? Oh, okay, quite a few. Yeah, there was a stretch there where they didn't need teachers, so there weren't a lot of interns. So talk about not feeling like a real teacher, you know, you're not a fully credentialed teacher, you're an intern, right? So we're going to send you in, and I worked at Santa Ana Unified School District as an intern teacher. I was not done with my credential program, and I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 6th graders were math, science, English levels learners 1 through 3, okay? And then in the afternoon, you know, because, you know, you want to give the best teaching assignments to teachers with the least experience, right? Right? So of course they gave me 8th grade honors English. No. Right? They gave me 6th, 7th, 8th grade math opportunity class for all the students about ready to be expelled. Said, here you go, you'll be great, even though you haven't even finished your credential, right? And it was back in the days where literally we still had chalkboards. We got $17 per period for supplies for the whole year. You had to bring your own extension cord to use your overhead projector. I mean, right? So they gave me a lot of skills to be successful. But I remember, yeah, well, like they do now, right? And so, so that whole year, I again thought I was faking. I'm an imposter. You know, I had no business teaching in Santa Ana, English levels 1, 2, 3, with students being ready to be expelled, you know? But somehow I made it through. But the whole year, I definitely thought I was faking it. And then my career progressed, and I, you know, went on to teach 4th grade at a fundamental school, and then finally I landed my dream job, which was to teach health at the middle school. I think that was probably the first time as a teacher I didn't feel like I was faking it, right? Because my background's in kinesiology, exercise phys. I had a minor in health, so I'm like, all right, I know my content, middle school thing. I created the curriculum. I felt pretty good about it. But at the same time, I started teaching at another university as an adjunct, teaching health for teachers, right? And so I'm going around the class and I'm asking everyone what they want to be when they grow up, and I'm only in like my late 20s at this point. So again, I felt like an imposter being a college professor in my late 20s, as you can imagine. And one student in the back row, you know, I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he was busy, I think, just, you know, watching the latest sports on his laptop in the back, but nevertheless, he said, I'm going to take the test and become an administrator, you know? I'm like, what are you talking about, a test to become an administrator? I've never heard of this, and I pride myself in knowing everything. So I drive home, I Google it, and sure enough, administrator, and it's in like 3 weeks. I'm like, I want to try it, you know, why not? So I pay late registration, take the test, and lo and behold, poof, pass it, right? Don't get excited, admin folks. It's not the same test. You would never pass it. It's totally changed. You're in the right program, okay? It's not my point, okay? But back in the day, the test was like an 83% pass rate, okay? That's not the case now. So no one go home and Google. That's not my point. Okay, so I take this test. All of a sudden, taking one test, $400, now I'm eligible for my certificate of eligibility, right? Crazy, right? California is the only state that does that, okay? And so I'm like, all right, that's cool. Student advisor job pops up. I'll go for it, and I land the job. So now I'm in still my late 20s. Now I'm a student advisor in an admin position who never even took a day of coursework to do the job. More imposter syndrome kicks in, okay? So, and then 9 months later, they make me the assistant principal of Corona High School when I've never stepped foot on a high school campus and didn't even finish high school myself, right? But the irony in that is awesome, right? And I remember my middle school principal telling me when I went for the interview, he goes, they'll never hire you to be at a high school because, you know, you don't have any high school experience. You only taught elementary and middle. I go, well, I'm only really going for the interview as practice because then right after that's the middle school. And that's the job that I'm going to try to get. Joke's on me. They offered me the high school job, right? And actually, I do have one former student in the audience. I'm going to pick on her. Ashton, stand up. She was at Corona High School when I was an assistant principal. Small world, right? And her mom was my absolutely fabulous right-hand man as my administrative assistant. So a lot of the accomplishments from that school were due to her mom helping me as well. So, so lo and behold, I am now on a high school campus. I've never been on one. I never even finished high school myself. I'm certainly not the role model that you would normally hire. And I just remembered just feeling so out of place, but partly I felt out of place because, first of all, it completely freaked me out that the guys had mustaches. I'm like, what's going on here, right? And it's just like, that took me weeks to get over. And the other one was the constant gum chewing. And it's still, even when I teach college to this day, I still am like ready to like jump on someone and like freak out that they're chewing gum, right? So, but anyway, it was just another time where I just really had to settle in. But you know what? This is really the first time where I had some real negative impacts from my imposter syndrome, okay? So I let all those words creep into my head. My middle school, principal, my former boss telling me, they're never gonna hire you. You've never been at high school, it's just not gonna happen. And then, Tammy, you didn't even take coursework, you're a test taker, so like, you don't know what you're doing. And at that point, I think, let's see, that particular year, I was like 32 maybe, right? So I'm like the youngest administrator. I'm younger than most of the teachers now I'm in charge of and supervising, right? So I let all these thoughts creep into my head, and it completely impacted the way I interacted with people, okay? Because I really, truly felt like a complete fake and a fraud. So the way I handled that, which was not a good way, and I'll tell you why, is I really just focused on task. So we know when it comes to leadership, it's really important you've got relationship and task, right? And relationship should always come first, followed by task. And I still have some trouble with that to this day, but at Corona High, even worse. So I was so overwhelmed by learning the job, feeling like I was a fake. I literally would beeline it from point A to point B, trying to get these tasks done, almost just looking down at the ground because I really felt like such a fake. It reminded me of the days back when I was bullied, because when I was bullied, I used to hang my head down too. If I didn't make eye contact, then there wouldn't have to be an interaction. And so I remember one day, my principal calls me into the office, Mr. Bob Taylor, now Dr. Bob Taylor, and he says, Tammy, I need to speak with you. And I was like, because as a perfectionist, I am now a recovering perfectionist, by the way. But as a perfectionist, I was just like, oh my goodness, if I get in trouble, I'm just going to break down, right? Because that's a weak area for me. And he pulls me into his office, sits down, and he pulls an envelope out. And I was like, I received a letter from one of our teachers. And I was like, oh gosh. And he reads it, and he starts talking about, Tammy Capolino appears to be very elusive, does not fit in with the culture of our school, which is very collaborative and is formed on relationships. She's not friendly, and she doesn't acknowledge staff. And my heart sunk. And so I really had to take a step back, and I had to think, what am I doing to give that impression? Okay? And I think I pinpointed with this teacher exactly what it was. Now, I'm not saying it was just one incident, because surely it wasn't. I was walking around busy, feeling like a fraud, not wanting to make eye contact, not wanting to talk to people, because what if I didn't know the answer? And so I thought back, and I remember a day that I went into the teacher's lounge. And, big lounge with all the mailboxes, right? And we had to throw paper in all the mailboxes, and we had like 150 teachers, right? And I probably had about 20 other tasks to do that day. So I zoom in, putting things in the box, and with my head down, trying not to make eye contact with anyone in the lounge, and then I walk out, okay? And that was a pivotal moment, because in that moment, that teacher did not feel like they were seen. They didn't feel like I cared about my relationship with them. And that is exactly why she wrote the letter to the principal, and she could not have been more correct, okay? As hurtful as that was, to this day, I thank her profusely for having the courage to write that letter. I'm glad my principal called me in, because it was a day that I could start changing my behavior and stop letting the imposter syndrome impact what potentially my success and my relationships with others. It was a very, very pivotal moment. And so the lesson in that moment was really that I had to make relationships a priority. The tasks would get done, whatever the case may be, but if people didn't feel like I cared about them, they were never going to follow me. That is for sure. I was never going to be an effective leader. And it seeped into other areas too, like email. And I'm sure you can relate to this. You get an email, what do you want to do? You just want to respond, right? Real quick, right? Well, I found out when I was principal of another school, I had a teacher give me feedback on my emails. And again, she was completely right. They'd ask me a question, I'd answer it, no problem. I'd give information, no problem, right? But what I left out was the relationship piece. Like, hi, how are you doing? I hope you had a great weekend. It was really hot this weekend, wasn't it? You know, if you get a chance, would you swing by my office? I'd like to talk to you about, you know, the event you have coming up Friday. So it has the relationship first, followed by task. And so that was a habit I had to get into as well, and it made all the difference in the world. It's just interesting how, right, just the small things make the big difference. I'll be honest with you, to this day, when I write the emails, I still do task first. Shh, don't tell anybody. And then I have to stop myself and say, oh, I got to go back and do all the relationship building up front, and then still have the task and send. But again, what was really, that was not from poor leadership ability. It wasn't because my education didn't prepare me to be a leader. It was really the imposter syndrome rearing its ugly head, making me feel like I was a fraud to the point where I couldn't even make eye contact with the people I was supposed to lead. Okay, that's definitely something I would hope that you could avoid. Okay, and then around that same time is also when I earned my doctoral degree. And so we'll talk a little bit more when I get into the nitty-gritty on imposter syndrome, but one of the high groups of folks that typically will suffer from imposter syndrome are people getting graduate degrees just like yourself, okay? Like you don't believe it, okay? Especially with ed admin, right? A lot of you are going to become leaders and you're just not going to believe it, because what makes you different than you were, 16 months ago, and now all of a sudden you get to be in charge, right? It's quite an interesting experience. So when I received my EDD, I was obnoxious, because those of you that know me know this. I already had my name tag printed with doctor on it the day of my defense, And if you were to follow me in the parking lot, yes, my license might say doctor. So I guess I've settled in, right? I've embraced it. But for many years, I did not embrace it. And so when you first get your degree, you're probably going to find that you're going to suffer from imposter syndrome to a certain extent, especially if your new degree comes with a new position, okay? It's those transitional times that oftentimes you'll experience it the most. So that was another one. And then lastly, this is where I started coming out of my imposter syndrome a bit. So I had overcome the looking at people in the eyes, making sure it was relationship before task. Okay, this is my first principal job now. That's where they gave me the feedback on the emails though, okay? But I still found myself doing another thing that is part of the imposter syndrome. I was trying to emulate other leaders, okay? So instead of being me, I was trying to be Dr. Bob Taylor, my old boss, right? I was trying to be, Brenda McGaffigan, who was my principal in Santa Ana Unified. I was trying to be somebody else, right? How many of you have done that? Okay, right. And probably a lot of you did it like back when you were teaching. You probably tried to teach like your favorite teacher, okay? And so that's normal, but it's not usually very effective, right? So has anyone ran into a time where you've tried to be someone you're not and it wasn't very effective? Anyone willing to share that story at all? Raise your hand a little. I saw the hands go up, so. I saw a hand right here. I saw a hand right here. Where's my mic people? Can you guys raise your hand, please, so they can see you? I feel rude pointing. All right.
Hi. Yeah, it was actually what you just said. So it was my first year teaching, and I had an awesome master teacher, and she was just had a commanding presence, and I couldn't even tell what she did for classroom management because she just did it so naturally. And so when I became a teacher and I walked into the room, I don't have a commanding presence, and people aren't in any way intimidated by me usually. And so trying to do what she did was just impossible, and I tried to do that for like a year probably until I figured out that I needed to do what worked for me.
Right. Exactly. Anyone else have a quick story? We did have more hands up, but I think people are being shy. Oh, we have got one more. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Miriam, and at my school principal, she's very nice. She does it all. Everybody loves her. Everybody follows her. So I try to, be more like her in my position, and it was great. But then I ended up feeling like, I was doing a lot of the work for people, and just, felt like really overwhelmed and tired. And so this year I said, no, I have to, be stronger, and I have to advocate more for myself. And so I learned the hard way that I needed to be me and still, maybe acquire some of the good qualities, but still be me.
Yes. Yeah. Great point. I mean, the reason why all of you got tapped on the shoulder to get into, ed tech or ed admin, PPSC, or CNI was because someone believed in your talent the way you currently are, right? They saw you as perfect and, ready to take on that next challenge. They didn't expect you to become somebody else, right? So being your authentic self is really going to ultimately be key to your success. And, again, like I talked about it earlier, even, getting up here and speaking. When I first started doing large-scale speaking, I tried to speak like other speakers, right? I tried to do what they did and this and that, and it was just horrible. It just felt awkward. I didn't feel like I could pull it off, and so I decided, I'd rather be me and fail than pretend to be somebody else and be mediocre, right? I mean, I think there's something to be said about that. So during my career in education, the key things that really jumped out at me during this time frame was really about relationship building as being key. And we talk about that all the time in leadership, but it's a lot easier said than done, especially for administrators. And again, in any of the jobs that we are in education, you are overloaded beyond belief. Counseling caseloads are off the charts, right? Off the charts. Ed admin, when we went through the fiscal crisis a few years ago, they slashed ed admin support. I was running a middle school with 1,300 kids with half an AP, right? I don't know if you know, but that's bad, okay? It's really bad. And so you are required to do more and more work, and also just the demands of what we are asking our educators to do, right? You're supposed to educate them. You're supposed to meet their social and emotional needs. You're supposed to be able to identify if there's a crisis, deal if there's trauma. You're supposed to do PBIS, right? MTSS, on and on and on and on. And then if you're an administrator, you're supposed to be working with your district admin. You're supposed to be working with the community. I mean, you're supposed to be supervising bus duty. You're supposed to be dealing with fights. I mean, the list goes on. There's the time. You will never have enough time, okay? But you always need to make time for the relationship piece of your position. And then the second piece is self-reflection. That often falls by the wayside too because we're so busy. We don't get a chance to reflect. But had I not stopped and paused about my little letter, this could have been a missed opportunity when this was actually a turning point in my entire life and my career. So taking those times to really just ponder. And so on that note, I just want to give you another minute again to think about anything else that you've now connected with and reflect. So either some key words regarding what your learnings were during that particular time frame in your life, and you can think of another time frame if mine doesn't match up with yours or if you already did career in education, okay? And any times where maybe you felt like an imposter. And just FYI, those that are in the programs that have to do an assignment afterwards, I'm front loading you with some of your information, wink, wink. It may help you with your assignment, just saying. Some pre-work. Okay. Do we have just a couple people who are willing to share thoughts? Oh, great. We've got 2 over here. Thank you so much for volunteering.
Hi, my name's Daisy, and I'm going to do the second question, which is about it feeling like an imposter. So my undergrad, I started off doing everything like going into pre-med. So my undergrad is biology, but it didn't make sense because I don't even like to be next to sick people. Like anyone's coughing, I'm like moving away. So I got into it because, I was encouraged, like you do really well in science, but it ended up not working out. So then I have a science degree. when I was little, I always just say I wanted to be a teacher. So I'll be a science teacher. So I went through that. I went to high school. I made it to November. I did not feel prepared. I felt like I only was there because I had gone through a science program and it was the easier way out. I felt like I was a student there. I was getting yelled at like I was a student. Kind of like somebody else had said, you just feel like you're still there. Mentally, I didn't feel like I was a teacher yet. So I left, went back. I wanted to always do elementary. That's when I got my multiple subject. However, I still feel like an imposter because I look at others who like did liberal studies, they like prepped all those years. And to me, I'm like, oh, I just went back for like a few classes, and then I got my credential. I took this stuff, and now I'm here, and I'm supposed to be like mentally where everybody else has gone through. So currently, I feel like an imposter, and then even so being here now too as well. So I'm actually really excited to be in this because I feel like it's going to give me more of that, like you should be there type of thing.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Right here.
Hello, my name's Tim Marklovitz, and the reason I'm here today is I saw the topic and I went, oh my God, yeah, I have to be here for this. I graduated, I did my undergrad in Michigan, that's where I'm from, and it was in broadcasting and film. That's just what I was always interested in. And there's not a lot of broadcasting and film jobs in Detroit. So my aunt worked for an elementary school. She knew I needed a job right out of college. And I worked as a paraprofessional, like a one-on-one aide in special education. No experience, but my aunt got me the job, so I took it. And that was kind of my moment of, okay, I'm going to get back in education. Or I'm going to go back to school and become a teacher. I loved it so much. I took the easy route when it came time to do my student teaching. I ended up doing my student teaching with a man that I went to high school with. He was my favorite teacher in high school. He taught broadcasting, but he also taught English. I have no experience in English at all, but he was somebody that I got placed with, and I was happy to do it because I knew him, and it was easy, and I knew he was going to give me an A or pass me, whatever. And that was bad because I ended up teaching 5 periods of English and 1 period of broadcasting, And then, you know, my student teaching experience was okay, but I ultimately left for California as soon as it was done, worked in television for a few years, thought this is what I'm going to do. I had that teaching certification in Michigan. I was never going to use it, whatever. But I didn't like the hours in working in television. I worked nights for 3 years, and it was awful. So I got hired to teach English at a high school in Montebello, and because it was the only experience I had. Nobody's going to hire me to teach broadcasting, you know, only broadcasting. So I taught English. I'd never read a book. I read Animal Farm. That was the only book I'd ever read.
That's one of the only books I ever read.
Yeah. I read Animal Farm when I was doing my student teaching, so I would have been, what, like 25 years old? That was the first novel I ever truly, honestly read, cover to cover, and now I'm teaching honors world literature in high school. And I'm like, oh no, but wait, my story gets worse. After my first year, the AP teacher retired, and he liked me. So on his way out, he suggested that I take over AP my second year. And I was like, no. But the principal said, no, you can do it. And then the teacher who was retired said, no, you can do it. I'm like, okay. So I did it, and the first couple of years were bad. But I was determined to be better, you know, and I worked hard, and they did get better.
You read a few more books.
I read a few more books,
Okay, that's good. I just want to make sure, yeah.
I read a few more Spark Notes. And the scores went up, and we had one really good year. I think it was 2017, where like 75% of my kids passed the exam, where like 2 years earlier I had like 10% pass the exam. And I felt like I was doing great, and I was like, oh, I figured this out, you know. And then last year, scores went down again. And now I'm back here like, oh yeah, that was a good class a couple years ago, and I'm not a good teacher, and you know, and it's like, it's hard, you know. But I identify with this topic so much because it's something I've dealt with for so long, and I'm grateful to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for this story, and I'm glad you read Animal Farm. That's an excellent book. I always felt like you too, because I left high school early. That's when you took the literature, was in your junior and senior years, basically. So I feel like I missed out on a lot of the classics too, but I'm glad now that you taught AP that you've read a few more. That's a positive. So, well, that's good that it seems like a lot of you can relate. So we're going to just dig deeper into imposter syndrome right now for a bit, the nuts and bolts. Well, maybe after a cartoon, sorry. So it just says, it's perfectly okay to occasionally feel like a fraud when it comes to your career. I'm just not sure you need to say that on your resume. So, and believe it or not, I actually, I work with a lot of folks on, resume prep, being in a, leadership program at the doctoral and graduate level. And I would say most people do still undersell themselves on their resumes, which is interesting. So they're not saying they're a fraud, but, people have a really hard time sharing the accomplishments that they've achieved. So some nuts and bolts on imposter syndrome. There's a lot of different definitions, and I think obviously we have a pretty good grasp as we've been talking about it, but it's also called the imposter phenomenon. So you'll hear it called either one of those two things. It's the same thing, but it's when you doubt your accomplishments, when you feel like you're a fraud, a fake, when that inner critic just keeps chiming in, telling you, you can't do this, just like me for the last 5 months, you're not a Keynote, right? And, you're not a doctor, all those different things just feed into your brain. And so then you really do carry yourself in the world and in your career feeling like you're a fraud. And you know what? Isn't it a really uncomfortable feeling? Okay. And then for a lot of folks, it can be magnified for those that already tend to have some level of anxiety. And then you combine that with feeling like an imposter and a fraud. I mean, it can be just completely debilitating. So I'm sure some of you can relate to that as well. So here are just a couple characteristics of the syndrome. Obviously feeling like a fraud, or feeling like everything's based on luck, right? Have you ever got a job and say, oh, I got lucky, I got that job, right? Or you had some other opportunity and it was luck. It had nothing to do with, your accomplishments, your education, your experience, or what you bring to the table. It just happened to be luck, okay? Or you just kind of discount your success, kind of like, oh, well, that wasn't really that big of a deal, no biggie, So have any of you discounted your success before? Yes, most of you. Felt like luck was involved? Yeah. Okay. So those are just some key components. And I see some of you are writing them down, so I'll try to go a little bit slower on that. But the next set is some of the questions we've already been addressing. Okay. But I'm going to give you a chance this time, if you could, since it seems like it will work, that most people are sitting by at least one person. I just want to give you a minute, because we haven't heard from everybody, to talk about, have you ever felt like an imposter? What were the circumstances? Okay. What does the inner critic say about you? And I would say, you might need a moment of self-reflection to think, like, really, what is that, that inner critic, what are the words that they tell you? Like, you can't do it, you're not good enough, right? Most of us have some sort of inner critic mantra that plays in our head. And if we're reflective enough to recognize it, we will come up with an opposite mantra, right? And here's mine, and it will sound really horrible. Honestly, it does sound horrible, but it works for me. So, and usually it's just in my head, right? But I always try to, this is how I overcome mine. When I think it's not going to be good enough, because again, I'm a recovering perfectionist. Hi, I'm Tammy, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I have to convince myself that, what, I don't have to be perfect. So I always tell myself, Tammy, your 80% is oftentimes, folks, 100%. It's going to be fine. No one's going to notice. I mean, this is like, that's my, you guys, you tell yourself that too? I see some people saying, yeah. So we all have our little, sayings that we say in our heads. So what is the inner critic telling you? And has anyone ever shared with you they feel like an imposter? And I would just say, if they haven't, it would be really interesting when go back to your schools, talk to some of those people in leadership, talk to counselors that have been doing their job for 20, 30 years, or C&I professionals, or ed tech, and say, when did you feel like an imposter? Because I think, the key is, the more you hear that people are experiencing the same thing, the lot easier it is to recognize it in yourself and not feel bad and let it get in your way of being successful, okay? So I'm just going to give you a minute or two to turn to a partner, someone in the next row, and discuss those questions real quick. Don't be shy. Don't be an imposter. Okay. If we could have your attention, please. If you could wrap up your conversations. I know, I thought about that. Yeah. If you can hear me, raise your hand. Can you raise my mic up? Okay, we're ready to get started. Sorry, had to raise my mic. All right, well, great conversation, it sounds like. I bet you could talk all day. That's what most educators can do. So if you feel like an imposter, you're in really good company. So you're not the only one. And again, even extremely successful folks feel this way. So this is a quote from Maya Angelou. You know, I've written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out. Now I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. So even she felt like an imposter. And I won't read all of Tina Fey's, but same thing. Tina Fey talks about feeling like a complete fraud, right? So even people that are highly successful feel this way. So there's been research done on the imposter syndrome. There we go. And really it was first associated with women, and women do tend to suffer from it more than men still to this day. So again, but it really does cut across all races, genders, class, ethnicity. So no one is immune to it. I mean, we represent a wide variety of folks in this room, as well as the 90 folks that are joining us online. So again, welcome to those that are joining us online. And clearly, it's not just an issue that women face, right? It cuts across all sorts of demographics there. And it's also prevalent among people that kind of have some of those high-stake jobs, like politicians, leaders, those in higher education, okay? And specifically, graduate students. They talk a lot, and they've done a lot of research on how graduate students feel this way, especially when they graduate. So I know, you know, we try to work with some of our students as they head back out into the real world in terms of having them be aware of the imposter syndrome, you know, just again, so it's not a career limiting factor, right? Plus it's just really uncomfortable to feel like you're faking it all the time, isn't it? So the other thing that goes hand in hand with the imposter syndrome is self-handicapping behaviors. So really this is a way that you kind of find different ways to make things not really because of your performance, right? It's kind of like a way to kind of come up with excuses so that if something goes wrong, it's not because of you, right? So here are some classic examples, okay? The fake hamstring pull, okay? I remember that actually. It wasn't a fake hamstring pull, but I remember playing soccer in Orange County, JUSA. Anyone play JUSA soccer? No? Well, any sort of sport. But we knew on this one team, this one girl named Christina Yosoloff. Yes, I remember her name. Anytime a play was about to go wrong, she'd fall down on the ground. Every single time. I'm sure you guys know someone like that. Hopefully it wasn't you. But you know, it's like, you know, just when something's happened, they deliberately do something like, you know, to make it look like they tripped, or again, they got injured. And so that was like a way to like protect themselves from actually being responsible for the action, okay? And then like partied all night. Oh, I would have done so much better, but I was out partying all night. So again, it's just like a distraction, an excuse, so that way they protect themselves, okay? Substance use, and in the literature they talk a lot about using alcohol. So as a way, I'm sure some people use alcohol as a way to deal with imposter syndrome, especially if it really produces a lot of anxiety. They might, you know, use some other things to deal with it as well. But anything that they can do to kind of then layer in that automatic excuse as to why something doesn't go well, right? And then procrastination is the #1 enemy, okay? I am so guilty of that. How many of you are procrastinators? Don't lie. Yeah. But I like to say it's part of my creative process. And I'll admit it, they wanted my presentation weeks in advance. I'm like, oh no, my creative process doesn't allow for that. I need some more time. But it's true, I mean, that is partly how I work, but part of it is I have to process through like, I can't do this, I'm not able to do this, you know, I'm gonna have to fake it, and what am I gonna do? And then finally last minute, when you're no other choice but to come through and do what you need to do, all of a sudden you stop procrastinating and you get it done, right? Is that, and again, you guys really are a lot of procrastinators. Like almost every hand in the room went up. So, so that's something, again, if you suffer from imposter syndrome and you notice you procrastinate, that would be something I would say to work on, right? Because it's not very comfortable procrastinating until last minute, is it? I mean, there's a little bit of exhilaration involved in it, right? But in reality, it's really an uncomfortable feeling. And so that goes hand in hand with imposter syndrome too, okay? And so what I am going to do is I'm just going to, we're almost into break. So rather than going to the next thing and push break late, I'm going to break now and then we'll start with our next activity. It's more of a natural break. So right now it is 10:13, but who's counting? And you're supposed to have a break to 10:30. So please come back promptly at 10:30. This is meant to be a short restroom break. That's what I've been told to tell you. All the other things outside are for later. So please, you know, stretch, bathroom break, continue to have some conversations on imposter syndrome and be back at 10:30, okay? Okay, if everyone could take a seat, we'll get started back up. Thank you. So again, I just want to give a quick shout out again to the 90 folks that are online. They've been engaging in some really dynamic conversation in the chat box, so I just want all of you online to realize that we recognize that, aware of it, and you're doing a fantastic job, and thanks for participating along with us here, with the rest of us that are here in Irvine. So I just think that's pretty exciting. We have so many folks actually here with us today. So, okay. So we're just going to kind of explore the imposter syndrome just a bit more. I also, before I get started, want to just thank those of you that came up and talked to me and shared more about your story. And it was kind of interesting. It seems like big Corona High connection here. I talked to multiple people that have some sort of tie back to Corona High or Corona Norco. So, you know, small world, you just never know. But let's just see if you're suffering from imposter syndrome. And it seems like many of you might, based on the conversations that I heard. So we're going to just jump over this one slide, and I'm just going to take you to the assessment. So when you walked in, you were given Clamps assessment. That's the paper you have. And I know that a lot of my front row overachievers already filled it out because I was walking around before the presentation started. How many of you are overachievers and already filled it out? See the pattern? Everyone towards the front filled it out. So you always know the A students sit here, right? Okay, so those of you that are online, you should have access to this assessment either via email, I think I've been told, or actually in the resources within your course. Is that correct? Am I saying that right? So you do have access to this assessment. Those of you here with me should have a copy of it. So if you can just take a few minutes, don't overthink it, and score yourself for each of the items on the assessment. And then we'll go over scoring here in just a moment. So it's quick, it's only 20 questions. It's a Likert scale 1 through 5. So I'll give you just a second to do that. And then once you're done, please add up your score. So you just get points for each of the numbers that you circled for all 20 items, so a possible of 100. Everyone get a chance to do that? Or you're close? Okay. So here is the imposter test scoring. So you can see if you scored less than 40, you have few imposter characteristics. How many of you scored less than 40? All right, just a handful, okay? If you scored between 41 and 60, moderate imposter characteristics, how many of you were in that range? I was 55, okay? Frequent imposter feelings, 61 to 80. Wow, that's more than I would have expected. And then intense imposter feelings greater than 80. Wow. All right, well, I would not have expected that. Thank you for sharing. So it definitely seems like there's maybe, only a handful of people in this room that are immune to this, right? And even then, I'm sure they on occasion feel like a bit of an imposter. So I want you to take a moment to reflect on your test results real quick and ask yourself, what does the score tell you about yourself? Okay, what's it really speaking to? I know when I went through that test, part of what I was thinking is in different instances, I may have different levels of feeling like an imposter. Did any of you feel that when you were answering the question? Like if you thought about it like professionally, you might feel a little bit differently than if you were thinking about it personally. You know, you'd probably think about it a little differently depending on if you were thinking about in most recent times compared to if you were thinking over the course of your life. It could change the answers too. So are there some areas in your life you're more sure of yourself than others? So like maybe you're really confident in career, maybe you have a hobby or some other skill that you feel extremely confident in. Maybe in other areas you feel more of like an imposter. Like for those of you obviously going through grad school, that's something new. You haven't done it before, especially our admin candidates. Most of you have not done that before. Okay. And then do you ever identify with self-handicapping behaviors? So again, kind of those ways that we make excuses for not really being our best, right? As a cover-up for the fact that we just feel like we're a fraud or a fake, okay? So think about that for just a moment, and I'm gonna unleash you with talking to a partner again, but if we could just be really aware of time, and as soon as I try to bring us back, let's only talk about this one briefly so we can stay on track, deal? Okay, all right, so go ahead and give yourself a moment to think about that and talk those 3 questions over with someone sitting next to you. Okay, if we can bring it back. Thank you so much. Okay. So in general, were you feeling a little surprised how maybe you actually suffer from imposter syndrome more than you thought? Okay, well, good. Self-awareness is the first step, right? So now we're going to talk a little bit more and get a little bit more into the superhero within aspect. So, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So, what we know that is that superheroes and heroes in real life and the leaders in our real life, rarely did they take a smooth path, right? So like I was thinking of, you know, the prior speaker, Jeff Eben, right? Do you guys, are you familiar with his story? Some of you are, some of you not. I mean, so he was in a pretty devastating water skiing accident when he was in high school. And so he became paralyzed. Basically from the neck down, he has some movement of his arms, but he ended up being married, had children, and was a very successful principal in the Central Valley. He's very inspirational. And so, again, if he were to have gotten up on stage and told you how perfect his life was, it would hardly be an interesting presentation, right? I mean, that's the people that we look up to and our heroes in our life, rarely did they have this perfect, smooth path, right? But ironically, oftentimes, there's so much shame involved in sharing our path that wasn't smooth, right? Whether it's, you know, I remember for years, I didn't want anyone to know I was a teen mom, because people are going to judge me, right? Because people are judgy, right? And I didn't want them to know I didn't actually finish high school, because then, you know, that would be an issue, you know? I didn't want people to know I was divorced, because that would be an issue. So, you know, we all have these little secrets that are really closely tied to those, you know, shame feelings, because we're scared to be vulnerable and really, like, put ourselves out there. But if you think for a moment, those leaders or heroes in your life that have meant something to you, I'm sure you're going to find that most of them had a pretty rough path, okay, but were vulnerable and authentic and willing to share their story. Would you say that would be true? Okay. And we probably don't need a mic, but if you could just raise your hand. Like, who is like a hero in your life or someone you look up to? Yes, just talk. Okay, your mother. Okay, great. Father. Everyone's like, oh, that was my answer. I guess we're done. Yeah, see, I knew what you were thinking. Uh-huh. Your sister? Okay. Anyone other than family that you think you look up to, or? Uh-huh. Your old boss? What, did the old boss have a particular quality that kind of?
She really supported me. I was in college at the time and kind of becoming who I am. And she was vulnerable and shared her story and reflected a lot, so she invested time.
Good. So yeah, so that relationship piece and being vulnerable with you was key. Right. So, you know, so I was thinking when I was coming, you know, up with this presentation about different superheroes, and really the superheroes at the core, they overcame something, right? So you had Incredible Hulk. His whole problem, if you will, was exposure to gamma rays, right? That's how he became the Hulk, right? So that's probably not the best thing to have happen to you, just thinking. You know, Superman had exposure to kryptonite, okay? Batman witnessed his parents being murdered, okay? And then along comes me. Mine's just exposure to life. So, and you know, I've shared with you a lot of my personal story so far, and a lot of it was how you know, my personal story was about coming to understand resilience and compassion and relationships, self-reflection, but there was still a few more lessons to be learned on my journey, as I'm sure there will be the rest of my life. So I'm 45, so this is my lessons up until now, you know, volume 1, okay? There'll be more to come. But, you know, the powers that be had some pretty tough lessons that I still needed to learn. And when I'm going through life, one of the things that I think helps when you're going through something negative or trauma, like, you know, like all those things that I mentioned, that I've gone through, and I know you guys have been through similar things, if you can reframe it into a positive and really look for the learning and really be self-reflective, that's when you can grow. And when you can grow, that's when you can help grow others, right? By sharing your story. And I'm a big believer in that. So there was one more big kind of lesson that needed to be learned on my end that drastically has impacted the way I approach life and my leadership. So this is a photo of my family. So I told you I had 4 kids. So I'll just at least tell you their names, to be fair. So on the far left is Troy, that's me. Kyle, my oldest son. Cody. Tony is not my kid, just, you know, I think it's pretty obvious. And then Troy on the end. So my family was your typical family, 4 kids, you know, going through life. And then, like many families, addiction came and played a role into ours. So how many of you have some sort of connection with addiction? Personally, friend, cousin, a friend's friend, right? So pretty much, yeah, the whole room, it's pretty prevalent. And so, sorry, I try to not make them too graphic, but a few years ago, my son Cody, so he's your typical student. He was high school championship wrestler, AP student, college, drove a Lexus, had a girlfriend, and was just promoted at work. And he was kind of got wrapped up into drugs. And this is after my oldest son, Kyle, had also already started using, right? I won't go into the full details on how long. But Cody ended up being in ICU for 21 days, 9 days on life support, and he did make it. He lived, right? But at the time when this happened, and it wasn't that long ago, I think this was 2014, you know, I've always been pretty vocal and pretty authentic and vulnerable. I mean, I've shared with you a whole bunch of things. And I thought, well, goodness, you know, we can't be the only family that this is happening to. And so I wanted to share. And we were just having a side conversation with the ladies right here kind of about this. And so I wanted to share. So I started sharing openly, okay? I had some people that were really taken aback, like, that should be a secret that is never shared. You need to act like your family's perfect, okay? I see some heads nodding, right? You just need to, you know, act like everything's fine, because, you know, if they think you have this going on at home, they're going to think that you're going to automatically have trouble at work, or that you're going to, you know, there's going to be emergencies and you're not going to be able to do what you need to do. And just, it's shameful, right? It's shameful. And somehow I thought, well, gosh, it's only shameful if it's my fault. It's not my fault, right? This is not something that I need to take ownership of. And so a colleague of mine, with all the best intentions, literally said, I would not recommend you share that with anybody. You keep that a secret, right? And I thought, well, it just seemed like that wasn't going to be the way to go, because if I kept it a secret and everyone keeps it a secret, we all end up feeling like we're alone and in isolation, right? And really, to me, it was another opportunity of like, okay, how can I turn this negative into a positive? And how can I use my story, our story, to connect and build relationships with others? And I would never wish this upon any family, and I wouldn't even wish it upon my own. But again, trying to make, you know, something positive out of a negative, I really had to think about, you know, what could our story mean to other people? And so as I started opening up, it was the largest expansion of building relationships I've ever had in my entire life, personally and professionally, okay? And that comes from being vulnerable and being authentic. Had I kept that a secret, those opportunities would not have existed. As soon as I opened up, I had people pulling me into their office at work, wanting to tell me what was going on, people private messaging me on Facebook, people text messaging me, people calling me, even strangers on the street as I'm telling a story start opening up, and then they start sharing their story, and you see this weight being lifted off their shoulders because they're now at the point where they're like, we're not the only one. Have you ever shared your story and seen that impact? Isn't it like one of the biggest impacts you could ever have is to make someone not feel like they're alone? And I think for me, that's a big piece of how I approach leadership is sharing of my story, vulnerability, and authenticity is really my gift in the way I lead, right? Because, you know, no, I could act like everything's fine and perfect, but that's not the real me. And the only way I know how to be is the real me. And so we got through Cody's struggle, and he's still with us. He's not doing great. But I've become an expert in all things, having to do with addiction and that type of struggle. But along with that, we also struggled with my oldest son, Kyle. And I would not wish it on any mother or any relative on the face of the planet, but if you ever get the opportunity, hopefully you never will, of seeing your son in an orange jumpsuit incarcerated and you're speaking to him behind glass on a phone, you'll know what a knife through your heart feels like, okay? And so, again, Kyle, great kid, and I will just say that, they always say, some folks still believe the school thought, drugs are a choice. Kyle's first taste of drugs was due to a major injury. When he was in 7th grade, he broke all 3 bones in his arms, and when he was brought to the emergency room, they pumped him full of morphine. And we knew that day it was going to be an issue because the genetic predisposition was definitely there. So, so that's one of Kyle's mugshots. That's his Facebook posting. He was very proud of himself. For a while there, he did go through Salvation Army and did manage to get his life back on track and was clean. So that was his before and after. The picture in the middle was his last Christmas. And then the picture to the right is myself and my husband holding his hand before we let him go August 12th, 2018 because of a drug overdose. Okay. And so I don't share this for shock value, but I share this because this is my story, right? And again, the power of your story, because I know I'm not the only one, but the power of your story is there too. And I want to encourage all of you to share your story as a way to really be vulnerable and authentic. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the importance of that type of leadership, okay? So taking the negatives, as I always try to do at least, and trying to make a positive, that's what led me to start doing some more advocacy work. So this is myself and a group. The 2 moms to the right have also lost children to drug addiction. The young man in the center actually became so intoxicated one night and distraught over his girlfriend breaking up with him, he shot himself in the head and survived. And the teacher to the left was kind enough to let us come in and speak to all of his classes at the high school. So, so I think there's great power in sharing our stories, and whether you're a counselor, obviously counselors in your way of connecting with the people that you're working with, administration, your teachers are going to come to you, they're going to be battling some of this or having trouble, and having that compassion and being able to connect is really key. Ed tech, I don't know, what do you do? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing. You guys are so sweet. But I'm kidding. I was kidding. But, our ed tech folks, what I would say, if you're working in a virtual environment, I think that's part of the struggle there, is that oftentimes you don't have that face-to-face connection. So really it's your jobs and your roles to try to build those relationships and build the environment for all of us to build relationships when people are not in the room, just like we have 90 people not in the room with us today. So really that last lesson that the powers that be wanted me to learn to this point was really, to use your life story and your challenges to really become vulnerable and authentic. Because, no one wants to follow a leader that's fake and perfect, even though that's how we've been trained in our brain is that we need to be perfect. But I remember too, the one day at Corona High School, since we mentioned that, my principal was pretty kind of, didn't give too much of himself away, pretty typical. But I remember the one day that at back to school night, back welcoming all the teachers, he did a little thing and he showed some pictures of his family. And it was the first time I saw him as a human being, right? And so I think that's something too about, putting relationship before task. You got to let people in, you got to let them know you before they're ever going to want to follow you. right? And so the lesson learned in that particular stage for me was definitely vulnerability and authenticity. So I just want to give you a moment to think about maybe, and again, it doesn't have to be related to this, but maybe something that's happened in another stage of your life, or something traumatic, or anything else that resonates with you. Almost everyone raised their hand and said they had some experience with addiction in your family or a friend's family or whatever the case may be. So just ponder for a second and think about what are at least 2 more kind of lessons, if you will, that you've learned along your journey. Okay, so my lessons were vulnerability and authenticity. What are 2 more you can add to the list that you've been keeping track of? I'll give you just a minute to do that. Okay. Everyone get a chance to ponder? I wish we had a lot more time for reflection, but you know how that goes, right? So really, the opposite of being an imposter really is being authentic. And so it would make sense that wouldn't that be like one of the best ways to overcome all of us experiencing this imposter syndrome that clearly some of you guys ranked really high. I'm really worried about you. You can see me afterwards. We can talk. No. So, it's really, with so many of us experiencing this imposter syndrome, the key really is thinking about your story and learning how to be more authentic. Because if you're really just true to yourself, you know what? Your job is going to be a lot easier. Trying to be someone that you're not, trying to fake it, is very, very difficult. And so, oh, here we go. Sorry, I jumped a few ahead. So this is something that Bill George is actually a researcher, and he's done a lot of work on authentic leadership. And so I thought this quote was pretty interesting. As leaders explore their life stories and crucibles and process their experiences, they develop deeper understanding of themselves and feel increasingly comfortable being authentic. Okay? Being authentic is really hard. Okay, you have to be really brave to really lay it all out there on the line. Because you know what? When you do, you're not always going to get a positive reception. Some people are going to judge you. Some people are going to think differently of you. Some people are, will have their opinions. But, if you can't be yourself, then what's the point, right? And especially for all of us going into education, that's what we want to instill in our students, right? We want them to be their true best selves. So how can you do that if you're not modeling it yourself? Okay? And another interesting tidbit, this was also from Bill George. He talked to a lot of different leaders about authentic leadership. And what he says is what stood out is really their life story. Okay? So their life story in these authentic leaders played out in their head and gave them the power and the passion to lead. So, that would be one of the things I would hope, when this is all said and done, you take some additional time to reflect upon your life story. And one of the stories that he specifically talks about is the story of Starbucks coffee. I'm not trying to suggest you all need coffee right now, just so you know. So the Starbucks coffee emblem was up there because, all of our experiences from childhood on really play into what then end up becoming our leadership values, right? They're also our values in life too. But, you know, Charles Schwartz was a little kid, and his dad would go out to work and, you know, kept changing jobs and was kind of struggling for many. Then his dad got injured, right? And the family was left in really financial shambles. So he developed Starbucks for a company he thought, this is a company I want my dad would be willing and proud to work at and could work at for a long time. And then Starbucks was one of the first companies to start instituting health insurance for their employees. Well, that all came from his story as a young child and how his dad had suffered an injury, had to bounce from job to job, and so that played heavily into his leadership. And so those are the things, like, you really think back, and that's kind of what I did in preparing for this. I had to think way back, like, what are all the experiences that really led me to be the leader that I am today? And so authentic leadership is, I'm just going to take a moment to talk about it. So, you know, you hear about servant leadership, which we heard about this morning, which I couldn't agree with more. You hear about transformational leadership, transactional leadership, charismatic leadership, right? There's all sorts of leadership. But one that is still fairly under-researched, and I think will start getting more and more attention, is authentic leadership, okay? Especially, you know, I'm not going to get into politics or anything, but that's really been kind of the swirl, is are people being authentic, right? Are they being authentic leaders? But authentic leaders definitely have some key characteristics. And one of them is being self-aware and genuine, okay? So really understanding your own strengths and limitations is key. So one of the things I recognize, like, kind of going along the way, is that I really think my strength lies in being the number 2 person in command. It just is, okay? So I thought it'd be great to be a principal and all that, but you know what? I don't have thick skin. I was still too sensitive, right? So that was really tough. I felt like I had a bullseye on my back. But you put me second in command, where I'm still in the trenches and I'm doing task work, but I'm working with people and I'm building relationships. That was my heyday, right? So I knew that about myself. So now I put myself in strategic positions where I can affect change and lead from a different position, because that's my strength and weakness, right? Okay. I know my weakness is that I will jump to task. So now I deliberately make sure I build those relationships first, even if it's in an email, right? So, I mean, I think you really need to take stock of your strengths and weaknesses. Anyone do like the Strengths Finder? Do you have to do any of those assessments, those types of things, right? That's one way, but you can also just take some time to reflect. And you know what? Great leaders reflect a lot. So if you're not taking that time, you should, okay? Authentic leaders build trust, okay? Do you think it would be a lot easier if someone who worked for me was having an issue with someone in their family with addiction to come talk to me about it, knowing my story? You bet they would, right? And so just by me sharing builds a certain level of trust. And I'm sure you've seen that in your own lives too, right? The more you open up, the more other people open up, and it's this mutual trusting relationship. But if you don't open up, then you can still develop trust, but it's gonna take a much longer time. Okay? And part of building that trust is being vulnerable. Okay? People really don't want a leader that's perfect. They want a leader who is willing to say, you know what, I don't know, but I'll get back to you, right? I'm not sure about that. Or, you know what, last week when I made this decision, I made a terrible mistake. I didn't take into consideration all the factors or all my stakeholders. I really needed to go back and rethink that and change it, okay? Those are the leaders you trust, okay? And so that's something that's also another key component of authentic leadership, okay? And authentic leaders at the forefront are building relationships and connectedness, okay? And I want you guys to be honest with me for a second, because I've covered a lot of material. I've shared a lot of my life, not all of it. Is there anyone in here that could not connect to at least one thing that I said on a personal level? Okay, so fair to say, if we were to go outside, I could probably connect with at least everyone in this room regarding something that was discussed, okay? That, to me, that was my goal, for one, but two, you know, there's a lot of power in that, right? Had I skipped all of the personal stuff and just jumped to the content, would we have had that same connection? I would say no, right? So be willing to give of yourself and to be open and vulnerable and authentic, because it will open those doors and to connection and relationships that you may not have been able to have otherwise. Okay. And having heart and compassion. So, you know, I share with you when I was younger, I was very judgy. I was totally judgy. I was so bad. Horrible. But you know, once I started experiencing life and realizing not everything goes as planned, that, you know, that's when I personally developed a lot more compassion for people. And so, you know, that's something, I think most leaders, we do come with heart, but really developing that heart and that compassion for people, taking the time to sit down with them when you sense that they need you is really, really important. And that's what authentic leaders do. Okay. So, really, in order to become an authentic leader and finding the superhero within. So just so you understand, what I mean by superhero is I really think about superhero as all those superpowers you gain along the way, okay? So, and those superpowers then happen in most instances to translate into your own personal values. So like I said before, and I'm going to recap them again, you know, I've talked to you about resilience, compassion, relationships, self-reflection, vulnerability, and authenticity, okay? To me, those are my superpowers. That's what I bring to the table as a unique individual and leader. And when I say leader, I don't mean leading organizations. I think even in your own home, in your own family, in your own friend circles, those are all opportunities to lead, right? Lead is not a job title. Being a leader is not a job title. It really is a way of being, right? And so, you know, I would encourage you to further explore your life story. I'm sure you've never thought about that way. Have you ever sat back and thought about, okay, from the time I was born till now, what are all these things that I picked up and why has it led to these values and these superpowers, and how can this enhance my leadership? Has anyone done that? A couple people? Great. So hopefully we can get the whole room to ponder on that one, okay? Really explore your strengths and weaknesses. That's key. The sooner you can figure that out, the more you can position yourself and navigate yourself in a way that's going to have the greatest impact on others, right? I mean, if you constantly put yourself in an area that you know you struggle with, it's going to be more difficult. You should still do it, okay? I'm not saying don't do those things that are difficult. You should, but just being very strategic in how you approach those things, and then also continue to develop your strengths, okay? Get feedback from others. The hard part with that is how many people will give you honest feedback, right? I mean, I doubt anyone would come up here and tell me my presentation was completely horrible. You know, I just don't think, I'm just saying, if it was horrible, I doubt anyone would be willing to come tell me it was horrible, right? Because that's just, you know, that's not how we do things. We're supposed to be nice, and especially educators, we're all nice, right? We always see the good. We always tell everyone they're great. We give out stickers like I did when you came in, right? Stickers and sunshine. That's what we do as educators. So, but as you develop into your career and you move higher and higher up, there's going to be less people that are going to be willing to tell you the truth. So finding a few people who can really give you that critical feedback will definitely help you be more authentic. Just like that teacher who sent that nasty gram to my principal and made me cry. You know, it turned out to be one of the best pieces of feedback I've ever received, and changed the course of how I operated as a leader. Okay, so try to surround yourself with people that are going to give you honest feedback. And then also share your story. You know, when I'm doing a lot of my advocacy work that has to do with addiction and that type of thing, I'm really big on share your story. But I think it applies across the board. right? You just never know what part of your story is what someone needs to hear and that they need to connect, you know, and it's extremely powerful when you can do that. So I would just say, as you go into your careers further, your current careers, in your family, or your friend circle, just really think about what's your story and how can you share it. And then if you do, okay, I'm going to be a little silly right now, so just bear with me, okay? So, but if you do start sharing your story, I think you're really going to start gaining some superpowers, okay? And so, you know, you got the pow and you got the zap. I know, isn't this cute? So cute. Yes. And then, and what I think you'll really find is, if it clicks, the real superpowers are really already within you. And I have to wear a cape, because what would be having all these superpowers be if I didn't also have a cape to go with it? And so I would just leave you with this: be the kind of leader that you would follow. And lastly, what's your story? So we have about 12 minutes left. For the last 12 minutes, I really just want to focus on you folks having some time to talk with each other. You guys seem to like to do that quite a bit. Talk with each other, share your story with somebody. And also, one last note, you were given stickers, your superpower stickers. Keep these with you as a reminder that really all you need to be a good leader you already have within you, and as a keep it as a reminder to share your story because of the power that it has. And as a side note, if you have a little black dot on your sticker, come see me afterwards, okay? And I want to thank Concordia's administration, faculty, staff, and students for having me. You've been absolutely wonderful. And stop being an imposter and go share your story. Have a good day. I think was someone coming up to talk?
Thank you so much, Dr. Capolino. It was a pleasure. I'm Kelly Albrecht. I'm the Executive Director of the Master of Arts in Education program and all 4 emphases. And thank you all so much for coming. First and foremost, thank you students for being here and online. We so appreciate you making the drive out here, seeing our beautiful campus. Please don't forget that the services fair is going on outside, so please visit some booths. And what I wanted to take away from Dr. Capolino's speech is that I really felt that being your true self was something that I grabbed onto, and that it helps me as I am in administration and working with so many wonderful individuals. But being my true self, always being out there, honest, just available for students and faculty and staff, it's really helped me. So the relationship piece of it is just being authentic. It's important. So thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.